So as you stated, we will see now the 4 principles related to information. These are a part of our book on nonviolent journalism, no? But these principles may be of use in our work as journalists, and especially if we choose a nonviolent path. If you have any question, we can discuss them in a few minutes, and will be great to have some questions or to comment it, yeah? Anyway, the first principle is the information as a public resource and the communication as a human right. On this, United Nations had been advancing and stating it as it is, but basically the idea is that we constitute ourselves as human beings through our relationships with other people, through our interactions with others. Together we form a body, a social whole, the society, as we call it. For this social body to function and develop properly, it is necessary for information to circulate among all the parts, between all the parts, for communication to flow in all directions. The receiver is an essential and active subject, as well as the one who communicates, without whom, without the receiver, there is no exchange or production of collective meanings, and acquires more and more weight, as do the rights that correspond to them. Therefore, a new reality is being shaped and recognized, which is even more complex with the arrival now of the social networks since 20 years ago, with all the development of the social networks, where the receiver is an active part, yeah? In the last decade, the defense of freedom of expression and communication as a universal right has grown considerably. This has also reinforced the struggle against media concentration and the need for control of the media by grassroots organizations as a tool for empowerment, social transformation, change of mindsets, and of collective discourses and narratives. Yeah, that's more or less the idea of the first principle. The second principle is permanent development of knowledge. Yeah. The search for knowledge is an essential activity of the consciousness that characterizes humanity, any human being, and acts as a support for the transformation of the world. Yeah. Maybe you have seen this many times, but also each individual develops and changes through the development of knowledge. From a historical perspective, knowledge is used for avoiding and overcoming pain and suffering. Therefore, one of the main interests of a nonviolent journalism is to contribute to the dissemination and transmission of knowledge. The concept of knowledge is much more broader than that of science, which is one of its manifestations. Knowledge is the fruit of the collective effort of humankind throughout its history. It is the common property of all human beings, both in terms of the rights and the benefits derived therefrom. The evolution of knowledge is a central issue for nonviolent journalism, which recognizes and encourages its development beyond what is accepted or imposed as an absolute truth. In this way, maximum interest is placed on the debate on novel alternatives, theories, and projects. Yes? The acceleration and multiplication of knowledge requires a constant updating of the knowledge of communicators in order to incorporate content that allows for an updated and comprehensive understanding of any phenomenon. So this principle is a very big challenge to ourselves, for ourselves. Yeah, we must update our knowledge and comprehend it as we go forward in our professional development. Yeah. Okay. Let's go now to the third principle, which states the grassroots as a source of information. As you know, the sources that journalism uses to transform content into news, features, interviews, or any other format are perhaps the keys to the reliability and trust that the produced information generates in our audience. That sources should be serious, rigorous, and their processing should seek to contrast and confirm data, as we all know, which are some of the basic lessons learned in journalism training. Any journalism school will train you on that. But even so, paradoxically, we live in an era plagued by fake news, rumors that are transmitted as information, claims not proven to be true, and an enormous amount of content that circulates rapidly through social networks and that frequently is of unknown provenance. At the same time, largely due to the accelerated advance of information and communication technologies, a large number of people are circulating first-hand, let's say, content. In other words, from places where events are happening, with testimonies from those who are experiencing really them, and with images that give an account of what is happening. Thus, multiple voices, faces, and facts of daily life are made known from the most diverse corners of this planet. The reality we seek to show comes from the multiplicity of people's experiences in diverse societies, from the many points of view of those who constitute those societies, the unceasing diversity of the grassroots. This is certainly not the only possible point of view, but it is the first, the starting point, the one that is directly linked to life, giving rise to multiple alternatives, looks, and truth. Priority is given to news that derives from ordinary people, from collectives and movements, from simple voices working together, and from the community on a daily basis, denouncing the daily violence imposed on them for the transformation of their living conditions and those of others. Visibilizing collective voices and efforts, those from below, is rare in the mainstream media. So it is crucial to elevate these voices and these struggles to characterize them as a source of dignified and reliable, legitimate and truthful information. These are the grassroots protagonists who are the seeds of the society we aspire to. Yeah, that's the third principle. And finally, the fourth one is the one we call beyond information, action. As Tony said, this principle proposes that in addition to reporting, it is up to us to act. We're talking about action that engages us with communities, social movements, collectives, organizations, and even institutions that consistently and permanently seek to transform their living spaces from the closest to the farthest away in a non-violent direction. It is not only about covering the stories of the social actors of the future, but also about walking with them. For us, accompanying a march, a strike, a non-violent action is not only a matter of profession, but of solidarity and active participation. Yeah? So we have these 4 principles related to information. Information as a public resource and communication as a human right. Permanent development of knowledge, the grassroots as a source of information, and beyond information action. Those are the four principles related to information. Yeah. Now, let's see if you have any question. Let's see if you have any comment, if you want to put an idea regarding these principles. Yeah.
Thank you, Pia. Barakat.
Barakat.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Pia. These are really very important items to consider. The one, especially the grassroots collecting information and experiencing, it might be the event or whatever it is very, very important for journalism, I think. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I want to say that these 4 principles are much more developed longer in our book. So if you have the book, you can take a look to them, you can read it again, you can find examples of several articles that are related with these, each one of these 4 principles. To get to understand them better.
And I think we can see, we can see all these principles work by looking at what happens in the mainstream media, which often the mainstream media is kind of the opposite of nonviolent journalism. You look at the voices, the sources that they use. You look, who are the people that they interview? Who are the people that they go to for comments? Often, I mean, depending on the particular story, in politics or in economic stories, they don't ask trade unions, they don't ask workers for their points of view. They ask bankers and they ask for people who have got vested interests. It becomes apparent when you look in the mainstream media how these principles work. Snigdha, I can see your hand up.
I just wanted to add, because it is I think boils down to the question of who has the power to speak. Ultimately, everything boils down to that: who has the power to speak and who has the power to be heard. Ultimately, theirs is the story and the narrative that gets told. Because so in my college, there was like a talk yesterday on decolonial ecology, and the speaker was from like the French Caribbean, like he's a scholar in France. And the examples he presented was something very different, because of course I have no background knowledge of the French history much. I don't know about it enough. And then it was like how like the mainstream environmental activists or the ecologists they talk about, and then it seems like it is them who have started these movements, whereas like the indigenous people or the local people who have been fighting for this for years, even when slavery was there, etc., theirs is like their contribution is not even heard. And that was like, even like so-called woke people can also be so biased and prejudiced that it's almost I don't know, funny to an extent at how like you at one point you want to appear as if, oh, I know everything and I am like the woke activist of today, but then you yourself are kind of playing into stereotypes and biases and prejudices and ensuring that certain people continuously do not have a voice. And he was like, of course he isn't an activist, he's like a scholar and a researcher, but I think what he is writing about in his works and the examples he's thinking about, because he was talking about this idea of like how France, when you see the ecology and like the diversity in France, it is on, I don't know, top 5 or top 10 countries. But the moment you remove the islands such as Haiti or the Guadeloupe and stuff like that, 80% of diversity is gone, and the France would fall to 45th or 46th rank. But then those are the islands which are not even seen as part of France. You don't even imagine them when you're talking about France in your own head. And I think so I don't know, this was just fascinating to me. And when we were discussing today about information, and that is the kind of information you fed into, like those are not even parts you're thinking about when you're imagining France in your head. And I'm sure this is true to other parts, for other parts of the world as well. Thank you,
Snigdha. David, do you have a comment on that?
I did a book on it. Absolutely.
So go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry for not raising my hand in an official manner.
It's okay.
All right. So I wanted to add something to what was mentioned by Pia, and say that I liked the last idea, especially the last principle about how it is our turn to act, and how journalism is a means for us to act and to make our voices heard, if I might say. So I like that fact a lot, because in a way it's a way for us to challenge the system, if I might say, and a way for us to do an actual thing in the world, not just criticizing the system, but actually trying to make a difference. And I like that about nonviolent journalism. And they also wanted to say that it reminds me of the concept of satyagraha. I am very much familiar with it, and I was fascinated when I saw it in the introduction, the nonviolent journalism booklet that you shared with us. And yeah, I wanted to say that it is indeed our devotion to truth that is motivating, if I might say. And yeah, I wanted to, to point that out, and to say that I like that first principle the most, since it really showed me that I am going to make an actual difference in the world, and I like that.
Maybe if you understand some little Spanish, you could go to the site of Presenza in Spanish and take a look to a series of interviews that we publish under the name Future Builders, which are just women, each one of them building a future from a different activist characteristic, from a different fight, completely different area. There are more than 50, and all of them are grassroots women that have developed a long strike in a different area, in a different field. Yeah, it's a very interesting series of interviews that we produced for the International Day of Women last March 8th.